Hi, everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. Today, we have a special treat on my Conversations with Friends. Today is my ninth show, and nine is the number of the healer and the teacher. And it's also sort of a wrapping up number. And so I thought I would wrap my first nine shows with a friend of mine. She is one of my oldest and dearest friends. And this is probably the most intimate look yet on Conversations with Friends. So um, my friend's name is Mary, and we have known each other since grammar school. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend Mary. Hey, hi everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. And today we're going to talk to my friend Mary. Today is my ninth show. I think you're number 9, Mary.
Nine.
Maybe number
Okay.
10. I'm not sure, actually. Anyway, Mary is one of my oldest and dearest friends. We've known each other for practically our whole lives. So say hi, Mary.
Hello.
So Mary and I actually grew up together in Jersey City.
Mhm.
And we were about, Mary, I'm a year older than Mary. I actually was in class with her sister, Rachel. She was in my class, and Mary was a grade
Year
behind.
behind.
Yeah. And I think I was Rachel's friend first because we played basketball together in for the basketball team in ground school. And I was the tallest but the most terrible basketball player. I don't think they just put me in there because I would get in the way of the other players mostly. And then I would come over, and that's, I think, how I met Mary, right?
We actually met because I don't know if I should say his name, but a certain Italian priest that we both loved roped us both into teaching. So he ran the Sunday school at the church. Now we were Catholic schoolgirls. We
Oh,
both went to our Catholic school together. And but the church had those public school kids come in for CCD, for religious education, and he roped us in to teach that. And you and I taught a class together, a third grade class together. You were Miss Vicky and I was Miss Mary, and I was 14 years old, so you must have been 15 years old.
yeah.
So that puts us at well over 40 years of being friends.
Mm.
And yeah, we did that for 4 years, I think. 3 years, 4 years?
Until I went to
Third grade.
college,
So
I
3 years. It would have been 3 years then, because
yeah.
I was a year behind you. I don't think I was in eighth grade. I think I was in high school.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I think, yeah, and then I went to Long Island to go to school. I went to Hofstra,
yeah,
and then a year later you went to Boston, to BC.
yeah.
And you actually, I only did 12 years of Catholic school, and you did 16?
16 years. Yeah, yeah. Those Jesuits. Those
Uh,
Jesuits got a hold of me, and I did another 4 years of Catholic school with them, which was really awesome. I love the Jesuits. And then I did 2 years with a Jesuit volunteer program, which is kind of like AmeriCorps, a Peace Corps called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, Mary and I actually, Mary's always sort of been in my life when big major shifts occurred. And I think the first one, of course, teaching Sunday school was a big deal. It was my first foray into teaching, even though I didn't ultimately become a teacher. But there was, Mary went to Boston, and I visited Boston with her sister. And that was the first time I'd been to Boston. And that was a huge,
Oh,
that was my
I
first,
forgot about that. I
yes,
completely forgot about that. Yeah.
that wasn't the beginning of my love affair with New England and Boston. I
Hmm.
saw all the cute boys, and I was like,
This is where I want to
this is
be.
where I want to be. And it was the first time I had ice cream that they put like candy inside of. Remember Steve's down was,
Right.
yeah, like that was the
The
first time
mix-ins,
I'd sit down.
That was not a thing in New Jersey yet. Certainly not in
Right.
Jersey City.
Right. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that wasn't Jersey City. And that's something else that we We sort of escaped Jersey City.
We both had a longing to escape Jersey City. And what is so funny now, because the neighborhood that we grew up in, the Heights,
Yeah.
has become this, like, I don't know if you've when the last time you've been there was, but it is becoming so different. It is becoming so gentrified. My mom still lives there, and I go back, and I'm like walking around, and it's like a little Brooklyn. It's becoming. It is changing so rapidly. But boy, when we were there, we just wanted to be in a bigger world, because I think we both came from intense Italian families where you didn't leave home, and we wanted to bust out.
Well, the only way you could really bust out was through education. That was the only option we had.
Yeah.
Or getting married, which of course was not an option for us because we weren't really interested in.
Right. Right. Well,
Being.
I'm the first person in my family to go away to college, so I took a lot of heat for that. Um, you remember?
Yes,
And
I do.
yeah, so that was yeah, we both had the urge to kind of forge new paths and explore new territory.
Yeah, I think that we both felt a little bit like outsiders in our world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. Very
and
much.
and we didn't as much as, and I've known you for many years, and I know how precious your family is and how much they loved you, and they loved me too. It's like I felt really at home with your family, so there was always a lot of love and a lot of
Yeah,
support, but
spent a
not a
lot of
lot.
time at your table with Angie and Frank.
Yeah, but not a lot of understanding for wanting to sort of go beyond.
No,
Like
no,
like why
none,
would you why
none.
would you even think of leaving, like that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing?
yeah. Now you were within the cocoon. It was all good.
Right,
But yeah, supporting someone going out? No, that wasn't going to happen.
right,
That
right.
wasn't going to happen.
But
And my struggle over in all the years that I was gone, because I was in Boston for the 4 years, and then I went out to Oregon for 4 years, for the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and then I stayed out there, and there was almost this wall, like I wasn't even allowed to talk about it.
yeah,
My life there. Like I came home and I was home, and that's all there was to it. But my life there, no, thank you. We can talk about our subjects and what's unique,
right.
what we have in common, but no kind of curiosity about what else was happening in my world.
Well, that's interesting because on my end, um, there was a lot of curiosity, but I wasn't willing to say anything because I knew that anything I say they wouldn't have agreed with.
Right,
Any of
right,
the
right,
choices I
right,
made,
right,
they would not
right.
have been happy. So I
Yeah,
was a little bit more
yeah.
of the people pleaser, I think.
Hmm?
But I think my situation was just a little, I had a little
Well, you were
stubborn,
an only child,
right?
and your parents, their worlds were, sorry about that, their world revolved around you. And I remember sitting at your kitchen table, and one day, or maybe we weren't at the kitchen table, maybe we were away, when I had come back, and we were both in our mid-20s, and just saying to you, you got to get out, you got to get your own place. And I think within a month you had moved to Red Bank.
Yeah, that's when I had just gotten out of I had just gotten out of chiropractic school at that time.
Chiropractic school, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we were
So
both in our mid-20s. I came home to kind of rescue my family after 8 years away. You were back home after being in school for how many, 7, 8 years. And
long time. Yeah.
and I just remember saying to you, no, you need to you
Yeah,
need to get your own place.
and it's interesting because here's another time when I was thinking about coming up to Boston, the Boston area, thanks to you because you were the first person. But when I was in school, chiropractic school, one of my mentors uh, was a chiropractor up in New Hampshire, and he would do a lot of seminars up in
Yes.
New England. And so I got more and more, familiar with New England and felt really at home here in a way that I never felt at home in New Jersey.
Jersey.
Yeah, and I was sort of like, I was working down in Red Bank, actually. Oh, because that's right. You said you got to go. Then I moved to Red Bank, and I was there
Right.
about 2 years. I worked for a chiropractor down in that area. And then I was thinking about leaving to go to Massachusetts. And I still have the card. I should have pulled it out because I know where it is. And it was like one of these like handmade cards that I think you bought. It was you bought it in Portland. Was there like a
Oh yeah, yeah,
Those
yeah. I know that.
books?
It had like a rainbow on it.
Yes, I
I
still
bought a lot of those. It was an artist who had a stand at the Saturday market, the big outdoor
Saturday
market that
market,
they have.
right,
Yeah.
right. And it said something like, if you wait for the right moment, or there is no right moment, or you just have to sort of do it. That was the, I wish I
Okay.
had it because I could, yeah, I could,
Okay. That was the gist of it.
but the gist of it was like, there's no right time. You just have to like take the leap. And,
Hmm.
and of course I was like, of course she's right. So again, then I moved like 300 miles away from where I was. I moved to a state where I knew 3 people. I knew a lot of people in New Jersey. In fact, if I had stayed in Jersey City, my last name is on the side of like a fleet of garbage trucks because my father's cousin owned a rubbish removal, and they were nice trucks. They were red, white, and blue. They had
Yeah,
gold
yeah,
leaf
yeah,
on
yeah,
them.
yeah,
They
yeah,
were
yeah,
really
yeah,
fancy.
yeah.
And I would have had free advertising, but the idea of staying, in fact, I even thought about staying in Jersey City to
Ooh, that would have been soul sucking.
practice. And I think you said, no, don't do that. I think you might have even suggested that that wasn't a good idea. And of course, after school, like for me, 4 years of college and then 3.5 years of chiropractic college, and then you get out, it's like this big, like now you
What
have,
the fuck? What do I do?
right, it's like a letdown.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
being really depressed and not wanting
yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah. No. When I moved back to New Jersey to rescue my family, I was so lost. I mean, you were probably my lifeline during that time. I didn't have any direction. I needed to sort through all this family stuff, and um, it was a hard time.
It was a hard time, and that was the late 80s, I think, at the
Yes,
time, right? And
yes,
then another time that, again, I have this big life thing that happens. Oh, I visited you in Oregon. Me and your sister came out
yep,
to Oregon, and this was really key. We went to the JV house, and I met all your JV friends, and Mike was there, and
uh-huh.
and we walked into his bedroom, and on his bed he had Starhawk's book, uh,
Ah,
right?
okay, the spiral
The
dance.
Spiral Dance. And he's
Yeah,
like, I'm reading this book, and I just like focused in, kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And I bought it, and it changed my life. That
Yeah.
that
And
really,
and then like 88, 89, because I had been exploring some of that as well, some of the women's pagan kind of stuff.
right.
And there was that week long,
Oh my,
um, I don't even know what you would call it, with Starhawk, Margot Adler, and Louisa Tish in Cape Cod. And I
right.
remember calling you and it's like, we are doing this. And the
That's
two of
right.
us took a week and we went there and it was like,
Right. Yeah. And what's interesting about that was another one of those times when I had it was like a complete shift in my consciousness.
yeah, yeah,
You were with me, and that where we had that in on Cape Cod, and it ended up being about 15 minutes from where I eventually lived on Cape Cod for like
right,
11 years.
right.
I lived right on the canal there. So that was like we went for the week, and we were, and it was so profound. I mean, some of the
Yeah,
stuff
it was
that
completely, yeah.
it was really amazing. Yeah, and that really sort of shifted everything, and that's when I really started sort of getting into the goddess stuff, and then women's spirituality and women's psychology, and I read all the books, gynecology. She was, Mary Daly was at BC. Did
She
you
was
ever?
at BC. Yeah. I never took any of her classes. She was hard to get into. Her classes, unless you were
Especially if
like a
you were a
woman's
man,
studies major, theology major, you like there was no room.
right?
They could close out.
Yeah, she was amazing, amazing books. Really, really turned me
The
around.
ironic thing was that I was a theology minor.
Oh, that's right. What was your
Mhm.
major?
I started in biology because I was going to be a doctor like a good Italian girl. Thank God my daughter was fulfilling my mother's wish. And then I switched to human development, which is kind of a counseling program in the School of Education.
Yeah,
Now I'm a social worker, a clinical social worker.
right. right. And
Yeah.
then that was also, was that the time you met your husband? Was that, when did you meet Bill?
Bill and I met in 88. So it was right around the
Right around
time.
that time, yeah.
We went in 89 because I remember we were talking about, we weren't engaged yet, but we were starting to play around with it. And I remember I just like went into it with this massive fear of commitment and what that meant. And Louisa Tish is like doing this oracle thing, and she's like, does anybody here like have a fear of commitment? And I raised my hand, and I didn't realize that what she meant was like being committed to a mental hospital or something. So like
Oh,
everybody's walking on eggshells around me, and really what I'm talking about is like what do I think about getting married?
right, right, right. Did that
So,
experience in Pocasset? What was that called? The Goddess Week or
I
something?
don't remember what it was called. It's kind
I
of like blowing my mind.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was through Interface. The Interface isn't
Yeah.
there anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, in New York. I mean, the experience that really kind of like broke me open with that stuff was in Oregon. I had done there was a 6-week class on the goddess. Someone just kind of like did like different presentations, like the Wheel of the Year and Maiden Mother Crone and like that kind of stuff. And she ended up having a ritual group. So I went to several like large group rituals.
Right.
And I remember reading the book that was really transformative to me was The Mists of Avalon
That's
as
the
as
book
an
that
as
really,
a novel,
yes.
and then I kind of did the other stuff. And it's funny because I haven't really, when I came back to New Jersey, there's not a lot of goddess energy in New Jersey.
No.
There's just not. And I did try to like find some different groups, and yeah, I just like the people were just I didn't mesh with me. And so I didn't really pursue it. And I do. I've looked into a lot of things over the years, a lot of spiritual traditions, because I really, really, truly do believe that at their mystical core, they're all pretty much saying similar things.
Right. Right. The truth is the truth.
So the truth is the true is the true. And so whether it's, and the goddess stuff is so profound in really like shaking up what is just routine, and shaking up your imagery and shaking up your myth system, and
Yes.
forcing you to look at everything differently. Um, but Buddhism and Taoism and the yogic traditions from kind of like the philosophy end, not just the physical asana end,
Right.
they all do the same thing too. And
Right.
so I've kind of gone in a couple different directions, and have studied a couple of different things, and have pursued a couple of different things. And at the same time, my husband and I chose to expose our children to Catholicism. I mean,
Right.
they did go to Sunday school and were part of a youth group for a while, even though we were never hardcore Catholics. But
Right.
we come from an Irish Catholic family, and we said, we want them to be able to participate in family rituals. We
Right.
want them to go to a mass or to a funeral or to a baptism and to know what to do.
Right.
And so I've kind of been a jumble of a lot of different things
Well,
over the years.
I think the church, even for me, the church was a very profound experience. I mean, I really loved going to church when I was
Yeah.
a Catholic. What I didn't like about being a Catholic was all the politics in the church,
Yes.
who,
Yeah. Well,
you know,
and the misogyny. Let's not
yeah,
forget
well, and
that.
then yes, the fact that women weren't allowed to do mass and all this other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a feminism in the Catholic Church, to the extent that it could be at that time,
Right.
and that was
Right.
with the nuns, because we
The
were.
nuns in the image of Mary.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's the one thing that the Catholics have. They say the Protestants don't. They don't have
Don't.
a goddess,
Yes.
and so. But I remember being really, like, very sort of connected to the Mary energy and the Jesus energy. And I
Hmm.
remember not ever feeling that comfortable with God. Like, I would always ask
Yeah.
Mary or Jesus
Yeah.
to intercede,
Yeah, there's
because
a
God,
humanity to Mary and Jesus that God the Father doesn't necessarily see. Whereas I was always connected to the Holy Spirit.
yeah,
Like the Holy Spirit was always, where I came from.
right, right,
And of course, having all that Jesuit experience, and the Jesuits are so much about social justice and being in the world, and bringing God into the world. And it's interesting because I did a workshop at Kripalu last summer when I was, before I went to visit you. And it was wonderful. And the woman was basically coming out of a Kriya yoga tradition, which is very much kind of like the ancient yoga traditions.
Right.
But how do you live your life in the world? And how are you a good person? How are you a mensch, if you're going to use Jewish language?
Right.
Like what do you do to align yourself with the divine? Because then that's the divine working through you.
Right.
And you bring that gift to the world if you kind of are in sync with that, or in harmony with that. And that's the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And what I always kind of like jived with and felt. And I remember when I was kind of like, lost for a while in terms of what I believed, and just kind of said, well, I kind of like believe in the Force, in the Star Wars sense,
Right.
like there's
Yes.
that energy that's bigger than all of us, and we're just all manifestations of it. And whether you call it Goddess or Shiva or Jesus or whatever, it's all just manifestations
Right.
of that same kind of primal energy, force, spirit, whatever that is in all of us, is imminent, and we're all just part of that.
Right. And I think like what the goddess stuff helped me do was like really empower my feminine side. Like I think my feminine side was already empowered.
Yeah.
And that's why I got in so much trouble with, that's why
But it gave it word. You had words for it, and you had a way of thinking about it that it's like, oh, okay, this is a thing.
right,
This is
right,
not just me being weird.
right, right. And I think, as I look back, I didn't have the awareness at the time, but I think part of my search for the goddess was really a search for my birth mother, that I didn't really
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like I always felt there was something out there, some
Yeah.
sort of protective force around me. And of course I would associate it with Mary in the beginning, because that was the only thing that
That's
I
who was
had.
taking care of you. Yeah.
Right. And I actually, and nuns always got a bad rap, but I always found nuns to be, especially as we got older, like seventh and eighth grade, we had those
Yeah.
really cool the Sister Maureen and Sister Maureen.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
Sister Patricia Maureen and
Sister
Sister
Patricia
Patricia
Marie and
Mayer.
Patricia Mayer. Yeah.
Right. And they were like
Well,
super
I won't say
cool.
on air what we call them behind their backs, but
I never heard that.
Sister Blank Pat and Sister Blank Pat.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never heard that. That must have been that's you.
It must have been my grade.
That was
Sorry.
your
Yeah.
grade. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Middle schoolers. They're
Yeah.
lovely people.
Is there vodka in that drink? No, just kidding. This is pure vodka. No, it's not.
Yeah. No, mine's just water with a splash of cranberry juice in it.
This is spring water from the Fountain of Youth in Sandwich. It's an aquifer that runs from Maine down to all the way down. And it's like the best water.
Well, mine's from our well on our property, and it is the best water.
That's right. You're on a property that's an aquifer, right? Aren't you on
It's a
it?
conservation easement.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a 27-acre conservation easement, and we're allowed to clear 1 acre, but our well is on it. So
Well,
you'll come someday.
I will.
You're not tied to the house.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, on many levels, I've been tied down for a while now. But yeah. So the goddess stuff for me. Well, so it was a search for mother, right? So I think there was that. But then there was a point in my my experience with the church that I was really pissed off at the church, because I felt like they denied women the power.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
So
nope.
there was a one of the things that used to piss me off the most was that when they said that Mary said, I am your vessel, do with me what you will, or something like that. There was something like
the kind of passive sort of
victim,
passive,
right? And that's how I saw it. I was so mad, but I've actually sort of moved through that, because I think a lot of that language is not really like, it's where you're coming from and looking at that language as to how you're going to take it. So now when I hear, I'm a vessel, to me, that's me being a crystal clear channel for spirit. And
Yeah.
spirit that's
For a
not,
chalice,
yes,
or I
exactly.
can hold. Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah.
hold the space.
Yeah.
And so I've also, like, through my studies, right, I've studied Kabbalah. And in Kabbalah, the divine feminine is really the constraining force of the divine masculine. And without that constraining force,
Uh,
exactly, there
blah.
no form can happen. And when you
Yeah.
talk about the Holy Spirit in Kabbalah, the Holy Spirit is the divine feminine.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
really,
even if you get back into like the old language, the old Arabic language, Sophia, the Holy Spirit was feminine.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I've been very blessed throughout my life in that whenever I have been in a Catholic world, and I haven't always, there were always the church leaders were always people who were kind of pushing boundaries and not following the rigid strictures and kind of doing, what was spiritually whole and right,
Right. No,
between
that's
high
the
school.
Jesuit. That's the
That
Jesuit.
it's well, in high school, my religion teachers who ran our retreat group, the Jesuit piece, but even like the parish that we ended up joining near us had a priest who, you know, gregarious Irish guy in his late 60s, who really was welcoming, like lived like everybody's welcome. Like he wrote it on the wall. It's like we believe that, we live that, and that was really, that's important because the guys coming up these days are not, I wouldn't go to church with a lot of these guys, and
Right.
I don't really go now. Anyway, none of my kids are grown, but like my daughter had a good friend who died very unexpectedly in college, and it was tragic and it was horrible, and he's very good at using the church as a place to contain grief and to process grief, and he does that. He opens it for that. And I remember being at the funeral mass, and I said to him afterwards, thank you for breaking all the rules and doing what was right and what was healing. And he let everybody come up and, eulogize, which, they don't do anymore in Catholic masses, at funerals. Everybody was like coming up and talking. And at communion, Catholics are usually pretty rigid about who can accept and who can't and what you do. And he's starting to give the instructions, if you want to bless her, you come up, you do that. And then he was just like, you know what? Everybody come. I'm not everybody. And my daughter had a friend who was Muslim. They ran cross country together, and this girl's like, what do I do? And Claire's like saying, you go up like this, and she received communion too. And that's just who he was. He was open, he was inclusive. And I've been blessed that, my kids had that model. And that in the years where I said, okay, we'll raise them with this understanding, that I had that to go to, because otherwise I don't think I would have done it.
Right. Well, your Bill was also a monk.
Yes. Yes. People are like so blown away by that now when they know him, because he's such this quintessential like blue collar Jersey guy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I remember I used to define, because he had the business where he cleaned up toxic waste, right?
Yeah.
The environmental
Yeah.
stuff.
My
And
environmental cleanup.
you were a social worker. I always called you my most evolved and politically correct couple I ever knew. You did everything was for like the betterment of
Right,
humanity.
right. That's what I tell my kids. It's, I don't care what you do, as long as you make the world a better place.
Right. And so they will. And so
They
they
will.
will.
They
Yeah.
will.
It's that deep sense of service, which I think we both, we both,
Yeah.
me being
Yeah.
a doctor, you being a
Well,
social.
and I was telling you before we talked, I was kind of reflecting and remembering how ironically I got roped in to teach my son's confirmation class. And they do it in 10th grade. So it was, 12, 15-year-old boys who all knew each other and were horsing around through the whole class. And these three poor girls who just like, oh God. But I really made it my focus to kind of broaden instruction was. And so I had to keep it somewhat Catholic, obviously, but it was the
Mhm.
gifts of the Holy Spirit and the corporal works of mercy and the spiritual works of mercy and, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the, visit the sick, all of that. And about the gifts, I said the gifts of the Holy Spirit and, Catholic social teaching. And it's not just,
Right.
and it's like so broad, the rights of workers and the rights to unionize and immigration
It's
and
all
like
the Jesuit stuff, really.
all the Jesuit stuff. I was
Confirmation
like,
is like the Jesuit thing,
yeah, yeah.
right?
So it's like, okay, if you're going to be here, I'm going to give you something that like nobody else has taught you.
Well,
And
that's
who knows what they took away from it?
well,
You
you
throw
never
the
really
seed down. You never know. You never
never
know.
really know. That's
Never
pretty
know.
interesting. So, as I don't call myself a recovering Catholic, I call myself an uncovered Catholic because why would you want to cover that up again? But I do have to say, over all these years, I'm really pleased with the Pope. This Pope,
Yes.
of course, Francis, my father's name, and Saint Francis. We went to Assisi together, didn't we?
We did on our 6-week Italian Aventura trip with my
Oh my God.
sister.
Yeah, that was something else we did that we didn't even mention. That was another giant.
How could we forget that?
How
You had just
could we?
graduated college.
Yeah,
six
that's right.
weeks
And
in Italy, three
you were
young ladies.
you were almost there. And I remember because we were on the tour bus and you had it right. You were reading The Agony and the Ecstasy. Do you remember that?
Oh, yep.
And I was reading Trinity, which was the wrong thing to read when you're going
We
through
had 2
Italy.
weeks with a tour, and the other time we were on our own. We were either traveling alone or we were visiting family.
Yeah, that was
It was a
great.
great trip.
The Pensiona, Texas. Do you remember that? We
Yes.
stayed at the
Yep.
Pensiona. And remember, they were there was that book, and everybody was warning us about the bus to the Vatican. Do
Yeah.
you
We
remember? And then
had
we
that
got on,
lovely experience on the bus to the Vatican.
yeah, and then we went to the bus on the Vatican, and we got manhandled the whole time. And
Yeah.
remember we like sort of inched over to these nuns, and we like pointed our backsides to the nuns so that nobody could grab us.
Well, I just remember the guys on the boat going to Sicily.
Oh, calling us strawberries. I don't know what they said. They
Rachel was wearing those short shorts, and it was late, and we were the only women, and there were all these. Anyway, but there were those lovely guys in Venice.
Yes, that was fun. That was the
Calabria.
artists. We met
Had a
artists.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
You must
And,
know.
and you had the gondolier. Didn't he like sing to you? Was it?
Yeah, I broke the rule and I went off with him by myself. And luckily, nothing happened. He was a perfect gentleman
Yeah.
because I was not prepared for it being anything other than that.
Right. Well, I think we're divinely protected on so many levels because we were really babes in the woods. I mean, honestly.
Oh my God.
We we
Yeah.
had we had for two girls from Jersey City, we had no street smarts when it came to
None, 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 none.
because we were rarely even allowed out of the house.
Yeah, that's about right. I could go
Yeah,
to your house,
yeah, and I
you
could go to
know?
your house, but that was
Right. And that
about
was
it.
about it.
Yeah,
But I also, like high school was not a time. I went to a tiny girls' high school, so did you, although we didn't go to the same one. But I
just a
didn't
few
really
blocks
have many
away.
friends in high school. Deep friends, like good friends. I
Yeah,
didn't go to anybody else's house, I don't think.
yeah.
I don't know why that was, but
I
we
think,
were old souls in a
well, yes, certainly.
wacky world, in a surreal family kind of situation.
Yeah, I do think definitely soul sisters. And even with your sister, Rachel, I mean, we've been like the three musketeers our whole lives. And what's interesting about that is I come to find out I had two sisters that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like I didn't have my sisters that were my sisters, my biological half sisters, but I had you guys. So you took, and I wouldn't have found my mother without Rachel's help, right?
I don't think I know that story.
Yeah, in order to find your birth mother, you had to pay them like a certain amount of money, and at the time I had just bought my house. I didn't have money.
Oh, so Rachel lent you the or gave you the money, or
Yeah,
lent.
yeah, and she's like, well, what do you know? I said, well, I can't really, and I couldn't, like, my mother had the money, Angie had the money, I couldn't
But you
ask.
couldn't go asking your
I
mother
wasn't going
because
to be
I
asking
would
my
not
mother.
knowing Angie, no.
Yeah, yeah, and still she's not too thrilled about the whole thing, but you know, she did. And to her credit, my mother did come up here, and I said to her, Mom, this is really important to me, and I want you to be gracious to Illuminata, which is my birth mother's name. And she was perfectly fine. She was very friendly. She was very sweet to her. And my Illuminata is very sweet anyway. She was very grateful to my mother
Yeah.
for taking care of me all those years and really supporting me. I mean, I was so loved, you know. I mean, I was
Yes.
so it was like crazy love. It was like too much.
Smothering love, but love.
Yeah, but yeah, a little possessive. But you know,
Yeah.
my mother is a Sicilian, so it's a
Oh
little
yeah, yeah,
different.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Not
My
that
father,
different from the Calabrese mother that I have,
no, no,
who was
and
more of an angry, hardworking, you know.
yes, yeah, yeah. My mother is more of a. Oh, actually, our mothers are opposite signs. Your mother is an Aquarius, and mine's a Leo.
Hmm.
So Leos are much more dramatic, and you know, self. It's all about self, and the Aquarius is about like the group, right? And so in the case of your mother, she was out. She, you know, the group was her business and her family and all that stuff. You know,
Well,
so
and don't forget, my mother was raised in Italy.
that's
She's a
true.
war baby, and post-war Calabria was, boy, back-breaking, hard scrabble poor,
Yeah,
and
I
that
remember
whole,
visiting where she grew up.
yeah,
It was like a little, like almost, it wasn't like an apartment complex. It was all those little like
yeah,
houses with the
yeah,
low, yeah,
yeah, and the oldest of six, and just having nothing.
right.
And marrying, the first foreign guy who, my father had been living in the States and went back to find a bride. And she talks about that scene from The Godfather where Michael is asking for Apollonia's hand in marriage, and they're courting, and they're kind of like walking down this dusty street and everybody's following them. And she's basically saying, yeah, that's it. And then came to the States knowing nothing, being a 17-year-old who didn't speak English and had no family for the first time in her life. And, my father was not the man of her dreams in the end, and she had to work hard, and that struggle for survival. And, really, you want to talk about will and work ethic, and God damn it, I'm going to make it happen. I
Yeah,
mean, she really did.
yeah, yeah.
She
And
really did.
I think, you know, I see that in you and your sister as
Yeah.
well. I don't think, you know,
Yeah.
that apple didn't fall too far.
Yeah, but it's interesting because a lot of my spiritual journey has, and especially it's interesting because I have a physical therapist that I've worked with for different things over the years, and she's gifted and profound on so many levels. And so much of my own journey has been kind of re-inhabiting my body fully. And I was doing something. She was trying to get me to do something, and I'm kind of like putting a lot of effort into it. And she says to me, don't work, soften.
Right.
Like let it. And I was like, gosh, that is like a metaphor for my life.
That's right.
So like my mother's message is, you gotta just like keep working and never stop, and you're pushing this boulder up a hill. And what the spiritual piece has taught me is that sometimes it's about just kind of releasing
Yeah. Letting
and
go.
surrendering to it, and letting it kind of come into you, and that like I really took that as like my life message, like don't work, soften, like
Yeah.
that's where I need to go.
Right. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting because with one of my clients last night, the metaphor we were using was like treading water and how hard it is,
Right.
and just like, well, instead just float. And so that's, I've got so much of my mother in me,
Yeah.
but I've tried to kind of be open and take it to a different place.
Right.
And it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. It's interesting because both our mothers I would define as forces of nature.
Forces of nature. Yeah,
Very,
indeed.
very, very strong-willed. My mother
Yeah.
comes from a totally different place, though. So my mother said to me when I was going off to start my business in Massachusetts, she said, "Don't worry, honey. If you fail, we're here." I thought to myself, now that's a strange way to say good luck, honey.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
like, oh, you'll fail and we'll be here, so don't worry about it.
yeah,
So, but
yeah,
they did they did let me go. I mean,
yeah.
even the
Like
mere
with me with
fact,
college, because I know a lot of people who have said, well, my parents wouldn't let me go. Like I wanted to go away to school, but my parents wouldn't let me. My parents they did release me. And when I said I was going to Oregon, they didn't fight it.
Right.
They didn't support, they didn't encourage, but they didn't stop,
Right. Right.
you
Well,
know.
and that kind of makes sense because look at your mother. She moved to another country where she didn't know the language. You know, she had that in her. She had that on some level she understood that
Yeah,
sometimes you have to break free from to find your own path. And
yeah,
even though Angie is um I don't know, she's very much into, well, she's always been, she's kind of I don't know how to put it, like she wasn't the usual like Italian mother because she would stand up for herself and she wouldn't take crap from anybody. And and I sort of took that, you know, like that aligns with me. And of course my birth mother has that in her too. She's like super sweet, and she just sort of like goes along, and her relationship to her husband is very important, just like my mother's relationship to her husband was very important. But both my father and my birth mother's husband have a similar energy. They're sort of just like laid back, a little bit nervous kind of guys who have these like firecracker wives that they just sort of, you know, let them be who they are. It's kind of a strange thing. But I always felt like she was, one time she said to me, she said, "Why can't you be like your cousins?" Right? And I looked at her and I was like, "Mom, you would hate that." And she's like, "Yeah, you're probably right." Like I had to be like, she really liked the idea that I was different, and she also, it terrified her at the same time,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
because she
know.
didn't know what
So
to make of it.
yeah, I think she understood it, but it still scared her. And, you know, and my mother has a lot of fear. I think,
Oh, my mother is totally driven by fear.
yeah, yeah, and I think
Totally driven by
that's
fear.
part of. I
And
mean,
it's for her, it's fear of lack. It's fear of being hungry. It's
right,
fear of, not being able to support herself. I mean, my dad was a gambler and you know, lost the family fortune several times over. And so that fear, like, you know, for her, her journey was really about becoming independent,
right,
separating herself from that. No one's going to take what I earn.
right. I remember when that all
And
sort of came down, and
yeah,
she just dug in, and
she
your mother,
dug in and she rebuilt. I mean, she is the ultimate phoenix rising from the ashes.
right, right, right. And that's kind of a, it's an interesting, because my birth mother has more of that. Like Angie always had family around her. Angie always had,
Well, and Angie never had to be independent. She went from
no,
her
she's still
father to
not,
her husband to you.
to me, right? And my birth mother had nobody. She lost her mother when she was 5, and
Wow.
she came to America, and she had issues with her family. Um, she went to stay with her sister, and her brother-in-law was, you know, and so she ended up living in a convent for like her teenage years.
Wow.
So, and then when she got pregnant with me, she went back to the convent. And then my first year of life, I spent in a Catholic orphanage. So I've been like surrounded by nuns, like since I was like an embryo,
Right.
right? And so nuns have always sort of felt very familiar
When
to
you
me.
you were an egg in your mother's ovary, you
That's
were
right.
surrounded by
Nuns everywhere, right? So I've always sort of liked the nuns for that, you know.
oh yeah,
I've always kind
absolutely.
of liked the nuns, but it's so interesting. But yeah, so this is a little glimpse into us, right?
It's a little glimpse into us. Yeah. Yeah.
So this was really a lot of fun. We did, you know, cover a bunch of stuff and
Bunch of stuff. Yeah. Didn't
expose
get
a
in,
lot of
didn't
stuff.
do everything, you know.
Shh, we can't tell all our secrets. Although I don't know, we were never all that wild together. I don't.
No, no, we really weren't. I'm not a wild person by nature,
Right,
you
right.
know.
I think
So
I'm a little bit wilder, but I'm not going to talk to any of those friends. No, I'm okay. That'll stay a secret. But so it's been really great talking to you,
to
Mary.
talk with you.
And anytime we can talk about all kinds of stuff. Um, but I think this is good. And I'm going to stop the recording. Don't go anywhere, okay?
Okay.
All right. I'll be right
Great.
back.